From a father who stabbed his own son and then made him testify, to a defendant who spat in a judge's face on camera, this is every wildest courtroom moment explained. Ronnie O'Neal walks into court accused of the unthinkable. Prosecutors say he shot his girlfriend, hacked his 9-year-old daughter to death with a hatchet, and stabbed his 8-year-old son before setting the house on fire. The boy somehow survived, burned and bleeding, crawling from the flames to tell police what happened. But now, years later, the man who nearly killed him sits at the defense table, representing himself. No lawyer, no filter. The judge warns him to follow the rules. He smiles and says he understands. Then, he calls his first witness, his own son. The courtroom freezes. The boy walks in slowly, scarred from the attack, and takes a seat. Reporters say you could hear the hum of the cameras. O'Neal stands, towering over the defense table, and begins his questioning like he's in control. "Did I hurt you that night?" he asks. The boy looks down and whispers, "Yes." O'Neal presses harder. "How did I hurt you?" The boy answers, "You stabbed me." The jurors stare in silence. The prosecutor can't even look up. When the verdict comes, O'Neal explodes, shouting that evidence was faked. The judge cuts him off, reminding him he got exactly what he asked for, a fair trial, guilty on all counts. At sentencing, the judge looks him in the eyes and says she's seen horrors before, but nothing like this. "This," she tells him, "is the worst case I've ever seen." O'Neal doesn't flinch. He tells the court he isn't sorry for what he did. The judge gives him 3 life sentences, plus 90 years. The child he stabbed now lives with the detective who rescued him that night. William Webb walks into court already seething, his wrists cuffed, eyes locked on the judge. He's facing charges for trying to run down 2 jail employees with his car, but what happens next turns the courtroom into chaos. Before the hearing even begins, the judge calmly explains she'll have to recuse herself. She personally knows the victims. Webb leans forward, glaring at her. The air gets heavy. He mutters something under his breath that the microphones don't catch. Then he explodes. Without warning, Webb spits, hard, straight at the judge. The wet crack of it hitting her robe echoes through the courtroom. For 2 full seconds, no one moves. The judge freezes, her face dripping. She wipes it slowly with a tissue and locks eyes with Webb. Deputies rush in, pinning him down as she says quietly, "Remove him from my courtroom." Webb thrashes, shouting obscenities, claiming the court is corrupt, that everyone in the room deserves to die. He's dragged out screaming while the judge tries to regain control. Spectators whisper, stunned, cameras flash. The clip hits the news before the gavel drops. The image of a man spitting on a sitting judge flooding every headline in the country. But his outburst is only the surface of who he really is. In a later hearing, prosecutors reveal what they found: 2 murdered girlfriends and a tattooed kill list carved across his scalp. At the bottom, 3 names are crossed out. When the replacement judge sentences him to life in prison, Webb interrupts again, spitting on the floor and laughing. "I'd do it again," he says. The judge stares at him and replies, "That's why you'll die behind bars." The courtroom applauds as Webb is dragged out, still smiling. Daryl Brooks sits in court accused of something almost too horrific to process. Prosecutors say he drove his red SUV straight through a Christmas parade in Waukesha, Wisconsin, hitting 68 people, killing 6 of them, and never once slowing down. Witnesses describe children flying through the air. The footage looks like chaos, but in court, Brooks insists it was all an accident. Then, just weeks before trial, he fires his lawyers and tells the judge he'll represent himself. The judge warns him it's a terrible idea. Brooks smiles. From that moment, the courtroom turns into a spectacle. He interrupts nearly every witness. When a survivor breaks down describing the impact of the SUV, Brooks laughs. He snaps at the prosecutor for calling him the defendant, shouting that his name is Daryl. Deputies roll their eyes. The judge tries to keep order, but it's impossible. Then comes the moment that goes viral. Brooks stares directly at the judge, refusing to blink. She tells him to stop. He doesn't. He pounds his fist, muttering under his breath, still glaring. Finally, she calls a break, saying his behavior is scaring her. Cameras capture her taking a deep breath as he's led out of the room, grinning like it's a game. When the jury returns, they don't take long. Guilty on all 76 counts. The judge sentences him to 6 consecutive life terms, plus over 700 additional years. Brooks still won't admit guilt. He just looks up, smirks, and says the court never gave him a fair shot. The victims' families call him a monster. Brooks calls it just another trial. Franklin Williams wouldn't stop talking. The 32-year-old from Cleveland, Ohio, was in court facing multiple felony charges, including armed robbery and fleeing police. As the judge tried to read his sentence, Williams kept interrupting, arguing, rambling, insisting he was misunderstood. The judge warned him over and over to be quiet. Deputies told him to stop, but every time she opened her mouth, he cut her off again. After nearly 20 minutes of chaos, the judge had enough. "Mr. Williams, zip it right now," she said. He ignored her and kept going. Finally, she looked at the deputies and said the words no one expected. "I'm going to gag you in 1 second." Cameras rolled as the bailiff tore off a long strip of duct tape and pressed it across Williams's mouth. The courtroom went silent. Williams sat there shaking his head, trying to talk through the tape. The judge continued reading the sentence while his muffled protests filled the room. The clip spread online instantly. Viewers were divided. Some said it was deserved. Others said it was a violation of his rights. In the end, the judge sentenced Williams to 24 years in prison. But the story didn't end there. The gagging incident became national news, and the court was forced to revisit the case. The judge later apologized for the duct tape, admitting it crossed a line. Williams was resentenced by a new judge, this time with no tape, no interruptions, and no second chances. The new sentence was even harsher, 33 years behind bars. Williams still claims the judge embarrassed him on purpose. The court says he embarrassed himself. Alan McCarty sits in court, red-faced and shaking, as deputies warn him to calm down. He's already been found guilty of threatening a judge during a custody battle over his children. It started when the court ruled against him, taking away his parental rights. That's when McCarty's rage boiled over. He made death threats, vowing revenge on the judge who made the decision. Now, in this courtroom, that same anger is about to explode again, on camera. The judge begins speaking, but McCarty cuts her off immediately, shouting that the system is corrupt. Deputies close in, but he keeps yelling. "You all act like that. He win it. Shut the f*** up. I'm trying to think over here." The judge tells him to stop, warns him again, but McCarty refuses. I'm not standing, he screams. The courtroom erupts as deputies grab his arms, but he goes limp, forcing them to drag him away. They move him to a separate room with one-way glass so he can still see the proceedings. Even then, he keeps shouting through the microphone, taunting the judge, swearing and mocking the court. The judge, trying to stay composed, finally says, "Mr. McCarty, this is why you lost your children." The room goes silent. When the verdict is read, McCarty stares blankly at the camera. 20 years in prison for threatening a judge, plus 10 extra days for his behavior in court. He mutters something under his breath as deputies escort him out. The judge doesn't look up. She just says, "We're done here." McCarty thought shouting would prove a point. Instead, it proved the court's. Kamaya Gamut stands before the court, arms crossed, eyes rolling, already arguing before the judge can even speak. She's just been convicted of murdering her boyfriend, stabbing him to death after a violent argument in their apartment. Prosecutors say she attacked him with such rage that the knife bent in her hand. Gamut claims she was defending herself. The jury didn't believe her. Now, as she faces sentencing, she won't stop talking. The judge tries to get through the statement, but Gamut keeps interrupting. She shouts over the court, mocking the victim's family, saying the whole case was built on lies. The judge warns her, "You're going to have your chance to speak." Gamut fires back, "You've already made up your mind." The courtroom gasps. Deputies step closer. The judge pauses, takes a breath, and finally snaps. "You stab, you stab, you stab, you stab, you stab until he is dead," she says, her voice shaking. "I agree with the family. I hope you die in prison as well. If this were a death penalty state, you'd be getting the chair." The room goes silent. Even Gamut stops talking for a moment. Her expression changes, half shock, half smirk. The judge continues reading the sentence. Life in prison without the possibility of parole. No appeals, no second chances. As deputies move in to take her away, Gamut tries one last outburst, yelling that everyone lied. The judge doesn't respond. She just looks down at the paperwork and says, "We're done here." The gavel hits. The sound echoes through the courtroom. Kamaya Gamut never said another word. Diana Lovejoy sits at the defense table, hands folded, eyes on the jurors like she can will them to say, "Not guilty." The courtroom is packed, cameras rolling. Everyone knows what this is. The verdict in the case of the woman accused of hiring her boyfriend to kill her ex-husband. The judge warns the gallery to stay silent. The foreperson stands. We, the jury, find the defendant, Diana Jean Lovejoy, guilty of the crime of attempted murder. Before the judge can finish the word guilty, there's a heavy thud. Lovejoy's eyes roll back, and she collapses straight out of her chair, slamming to the floor. Gasps explode through the room. Her family screams. Deputies rush in. One of them shouts, "Call medics!" The judge bangs her gavel over and over. Everyone remains seated. Do not approach. But nobody's looking at the judge. Everyone's looking at the woman who just dropped at the exact second she heard guilty. Paramedics race in with a gurney. Lovejoy lies motionless, breathing shallow, eyes closed like she's out cold. The judge doesn't stop the proceeding. "We will continue," she says. "Bring the jury back in." While medics lift Lovejoy onto the stretcher, the judge keeps reading the rest of the verdict. Guilty of conspiracy to commit murder. Her boyfriend, Weldon McDavid, stares forward, knowing what's coming for him, too. In the gallery, someone starts crying. The cameras catch everything. As Lovejoy is rolled past the jury box, one deputy says quietly, "She heard it." Another juror later says, "That was the first time she looked real." The judge hands down the sentence, 26 years to life for Lovejoy, 50 to life for McDavid. This was planned. This was deliberate. This was done out of spite. Lovejoy is taken out on a stretcher. McDavid is taken out in cuffs. Scott Nelson walks into the courtroom wearing an orange jumpsuit, his eyes cold, his voice steady. He's accused of kidnapping and murdering a nanny named Jennifer Fulford, stabbing her to death after forcing her to withdraw money from an ATM. The evidence is overwhelming, but Nelson insists on testifying. The judge warns him not to rant. He promises to behave. What happens next becomes one of the most disturbing moments ever captured inside a courtroom. When Nelson begins speaking, it's not a defense, it's a declaration. He blames the government, blames society, blames everyone but himself. Prosecutor objects, but the judge lets him continue. Nelson's voice gets louder. "Somebody had to pay for what they did to me," he says, pointing toward the prosecution table. The jury watches in silence as he admits the murder outright. "Who killed Jennifer Fulford?" the prosecutor asks. Nelson doesn't hesitate. "I did." The room goes still. Even the judge looks stunned. Nelson stares straight ahead, emotionless. The prosecutor presses on, asking if he regrets it. Nelson smirks. "I'm a homicidal maniac," he says. The crowd gasps. A juror wipes away tears. The judge slams her gavel, ordering him to stop. Nelson ignores her, repeating, "I'm a homicidal maniac," until deputies surround him. The judge calls a recess, visibly shaken. When court resumes, the jury takes less than an hour, guilty on all counts. As the judge reads the sentence, life without parole, Nelson interrupts one last time. "Make it death," he says, grinning. The judge looks at him and replies, "You don't get to choose mercy." The courtroom erupts in applause. Nelson never blinks. Markeith Lloyd sits in court, one eye covered by a black patch, staring down the jury that just found him guilty. He's already a convicted killer, wanted for shooting his pregnant ex-girlfriend. But now, he's facing a death sentence for the murder of Orlando Police Lieutenant Deborah Clayton. Prosecutors say Lloyd spotted her in a Walmart parking lot while he was on the run. When she tried to arrest him, he opened fire. She was hit 4 times. He fled the scene, starting one of the biggest manhunts in Florida history. 9 days later, officers surrounded a house where he was hiding. When they moved in, Lloyd tried to fight back. He lost his left eye in the struggle. Now, he sits in the courtroom, calm, confident, representing himself. The judge asks if he understands the verdict. He nods. Slowly, almost smirking. Then comes the moment no one forgets. The victim's sister steps to the podium. Her voice trembles as she looks at him. "She stood in the place of my mother when I didn't have one," she says. "I truly miss my sister." The entire courtroom falls silent. Lloyd looks straight at her, expressionless. The jury files back in. The foreperson stands. We, the jury, unanimously find that the defendant, Markeith Lloyd, should be sentenced to death. As the words sink in, Lloyd leans forward and mouths something to the public. The judge snaps her head up. "Remove him," she orders. Deputies drag him out as he shouts over the noise, claiming the court is corrupt. The judge later signs the order. Lloyd is officially sentenced to death. He never apologized. He only said, "I was just reacting." Jessica Groves sits on the witness stand, eyes red, voice trembling, as the prosecutor stares her down. She's accused of murdering her 2-month-old son, Dylan. His tiny body was found at the bottom of a 30-foot well, stuffed inside a milk crate and wrapped in plastic. The autopsy revealed fractures to his skull, ribs, arms, and legs. Both Jessica and her husband, Daniel Groves, were charged with aggravated murder, but now, in front of a packed courtroom, Jessica suddenly changes her story. "Yes," she says quietly, "I did it." Gasps ripple through the room. Her husband's attorney freezes. Then, the prosecutor steps forward, voice cold and steady. "Tell the jury how you killed this baby." Jessica looks down. "I don't remember," she whispers. The prosecutor slams the question again. "Not your excuses. How did you murder this baby?" Jessica repeats it, louder this time. "I don't remember." The courtroom erupts in whispers. The prosecutor presses harder. "How did you cause a 2-inch skull fracture on an infant?" Jessica stares blankly. "I've admitted to my guilt," she says. "I have to live without my children." The prosecutor shakes his head. "You're going to answer the question," but she doesn't. She just sits there, silent, as the courtroom watches in disbelief. The judge has heard enough. The jury returns guilty on all 11 counts. Life in prison without parole. Daniel Groves is cleared of murder, but convicted on other charges, sentenced to 47 years. As deputies led her away, Jessica mutters, "It was an accident." The prosecutor doesn't respond. He just looks at the jury and says, "She remembers enough to hide the body." The courtroom falls quiet. No one believes her. Michael Brady sits at the defense table, staring straight ahead like the walls around him don't exist. He's already serving time for attempted murder, but now he's facing the death penalty for something far worse. Prosecutors say Brady masterminded one of the most brutal prison murders in North Carolina history. 4 staff members were beaten and stabbed to death with hammers and scissors during an escape attempt. Blood everywhere. No remorse. And now, in court, he's about to prove it. When the prosecutor asks why he did it, Brady leans into the microphone. "Because I wanted out," he says. "My freedom was worth more than their lives." Gasps ripple through the room. The judge warns him to watch his tone. Brady smirks. "You can't scare me," he says, his voice flat. The prosecutor presses him to describe the scene. "I stabbed him," Brady replies. 4, maybe 8 times. Then I hit him with a hammer until he stopped moving." The courtroom goes silent. Family members sob quietly as Brady continues to talk like he's describing a routine task. The judge cuts him off, saying, "You are a monster." Brady looks up for the first time. "No," he says. "I'm just honest." Deputies shift uneasily behind him. Even the jurors can't look at him anymore. When the verdict comes back, the judge reads it slowly. "We, the jury, unanimously recommend the death penalty." Brady doesn't react. No sigh, no blink, just that same dead stare. The judge calls his lack of remorse inhuman. Brady laughs once under his breath and says, "Guess I'm not human then." He's escorted out smiling while the victims' families cry behind him. The courtroom stands frozen, staring at the chair he left empty. Esteban Carpio is led into the courtroom surrounded by deputies, his face swollen, eyes blackened, and a white spit mask strapped tightly across his head. The sight alone makes the room gasp. Reporters scribble notes while family members shout accusations from the gallery. The judge bangs her gavel, demanding silence. Order in the court, but no one's listening. Everyone is staring at Carpio. Just days earlier, Carpio was being questioned about stabbing an 85-year-old woman. Inside the interrogation room, a detective stepped out to get water, leaving Carpio alone with Sergeant James Allen. In seconds, Carpio grabbed Allen's gun and fired twice, killing him instantly. Then, he jumped out a 3rd-story window and tried to run. He was caught less than an hour later, after what police called a violent struggle. Now, sitting before the judge, Carpio looks unrecognizable. His family screams, "Police brutality," demanding answers. One woman stands up and yells, "You beat him!" Deputies rush to remove her, and chaos breaks out. The judge slams the gavel again. "If you cannot behave, you will be escorted out." Carpio doesn't speak. He just stares through the mesh mask, eyes dull, barely moving. The prosecutor stands and lays out the evidence. The murder weapon, the escape, the confession. Every word echoes through the room. When it's Carpio's turn to speak, he raises his head and says quietly, "Every day I face what I did. Every day." Judge nods slowly, emotionless. "You are sentenced to life in prison without parole." The courtroom erupts again as deputies drag him away. Cameras flash. A reporter shouts, Was it worth it, Esteban? He doesn't answer. The mask hides his face, but everyone swears they saw him smile. Callum Fidner sits in the gallery of Bradford Crown Court, pretending to be just another friend offering support. His 17-year-old buddy is on the other side of the glass, about to be sentenced for stealing a cell phone. It's supposed to be a short hearing, 21 weeks in custody, in and out. But as the officers move to take the teen away, Fidner does something no one expects. He walks up to the security door, presses the release button, and holds it open. For a split second, the guards don't even notice. Then the door buzzes, clicks, and swings wide. The teenager takes off like a sprinter, bolting past startled officers and disappearing down the hallway. The security footage shows Fidner stepping back, calm as ever, hands in his pockets. Within seconds, 4 officers are chasing the teen through the courthouse corridors. One trips. Another shouts for the exit to be locked. Outside, Fidner strolls down the courthouse steps and lights a cigarette like nothing happened. The teenager makes it out onto the street and vanishes. The escape lasts 2 days before police track him down and add 6 more months to his sentence. When officers review the footage, they realize Fidner had planned it perfectly. The timing, the button, the distraction. In court, he doesn't even deny it. "I was helping my mate," he says. The judge calls it a blatant act of defiance and sentences him to 3 months in jail for aiding an escape. As he's led away, Fidner smirks at the camera. "Worth it," he mutters. The video becomes an instant viral clip titled, "The Door That Should Have Stayed Shut." Joel Delgato rolls into court wearing a neck brace and sitting in a wheelchair, claiming he's too injured to stand trial. He's facing burglary and theft charges, and his public defender insists Delgato can barely move. Deputies treat him gently, wheeling him up to the defense table as he groans for sympathy. The judge glances at him suspiciously, but says nothing. The hearing begins quietly until Delgato decides to turn it into a circus. When the judge asks if he understands the charges, Delgato interrupts. "Your Honor, I can't even walk," he says. The judge nods. "Then we'll proceed while you're seated." Deputies look relaxed, their guard down. That's when Delgato leans over, pretending to fix his shoe. The bailiff takes a step toward him, and Delgato explodes from the wheelchair. He rips off his neck brace, bolts for the aisle, and sprints toward the exit. The courtroom erupts in chaos. "Stop him!" someone yells. The deputy dives and misses as Delgato bursts through the doors. Down the hallway, he slips past security, slamming through the front entrance. Outside, a reporter's camera catches the moment, a supposedly paralyzed man sprinting full speed across the street. Inside, the judge is furious. "Lock this building down," she shouts. Minutes later, the radio call goes out. "Be on the lookout for a male suspect. Wheelchair dude ran." He's found hours later, hiding behind a dumpster, neck brace back on, claiming he doesn't remember running. When he's dragged back into court the next day, the judge stares at him in silence before saying, "Mr. Delgato, you moved just fine yesterday." The room bursts into laughter. His sentence is doubled for attempted escape. Delgato just smiles. "At least I stretched my legs," he says. Larry Nassar sits shackled at the defense table, head down, eyes fixed on nothing. The former USA gymnastics doctor has already been convicted of sexually abusing hundreds of girls. This sentencing hearing is supposed to give victims and their families a chance to speak, but one father is about to make it unforgettable. Randall Margraves steps forward, his 3 daughters standing behind him, all survivors. He faces Nassar and asks the judge a question no one expects. "Your Honor, can you give me 5 minutes in a locked room with this demon?" The courtroom freezes. The judge blinks, thinking he's joking. "No, sir," she says softly. Margraves nods. "1 minute then?" Another quiet. "No," he whispers. "Well, I'm gonna have to do it." Then he lunges. Gasps fill the courtroom as he bolts toward the defense table, shouting, "Let me at him." Deputies dive, tackling him inches before he reaches Nassar. Papers fly, cameras roll, and the entire room erupts. One deputy pins Margraves to the floor as others shield Nassar, who's still sitting motionless, face blank, pretending to be calm. "What if it was your daughter?" Margraves yells. "You'd do the same thing." The judge restores order, voice shaking. "I understand how you feel, but we cannot react physically." Margraves apologizes from the floor. "I'm not mad at you, Your Honor. I'm mad at what he did." The judge nods, telling deputies to release him once he calms down. As he's escorted out, victims in the gallery stand and clap quietly. Some are crying. The clip spreads worldwide within hours. Millions of comments argue whether the dad was right or wrong, but everyone agrees on one thing: no courtroom has ever felt rage that raw.